Factoring by greatest common factor. GCF stands for greatest common factor. So first of all, what is factoring anyways? So factoring is our process of separating a polynomial. So we're going to have our polynomial with our variables, and we want to separate them. This looks like it can't be separated, but in fact it can. And now since we know all of our multiplying rules, our product rules, we should be able to do this. But it's kind of like if we are given the number 10, and I want you to tell me the factors of it. I want to know what is multiplied. What do you multiply together to get 10? So that's what we're going to do for each of these. So our polynomials that cannot be factored are called prime. All right, so our first step is we're going to have an example. We're going to have our polynomial, and our first step is to look at our, I'm going to spell this wrong, coefficients. Remember, our coefficients are big numbers in the front. So we're going to look at these numbers first, and I'm going to say what factor is their greatest common factor. Let me write that down. Hold on. GCF is greatest common factor. Greatest common factor. So what is the biggest number that they both have in common for their factors? And I do have a hint for you. First, we're going to look at, see this first number. So we've got a 3 here and a 12 here. So 3 is a factor of 3, and is 3 a factor of 12? If so, then that's our greatest common factor. I also have a, a calculator menu. I'll write it down. 2, and you can see 5 is greatest common divisor, which is the same thing. And then you put in the two numbers, 3, 12, and it tells you that 3 is my greatest common. So if I'm using the calculator, in your calculator menu, 2, 5, that will give you the greatest common factor. So we just found out the greatest common factor between 3 and 12 is 3. Okay, now second, we're going to look at, excuse me, our variables. And for our variables, they must be common to all terms. I should have had 4 blanks. To greatest common factor, to be a greatest common factor. So when I'm looking at these two, I have an x here, but since I don't have an x here, my x is not my greatest common factor. We'll do, my x is not a part of my greatest common factor. We'll do an example like that in just a second, but let's finish this first example. For our final step, we are going to divide all terms by our GCF and leave the remainder in parentheses. All right, so we found our greatest common factor is just 3. So now what I'm going to do, so what my work is I'm going to take, put it in this color, 3x, and I'm going to divide it by my greatest common factor of 3. So remember, we only divide out those numbers. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and I'm left with this x. I'm not done, though. I need to take my 12 and also divide that by 3. So that is 4. So how I write my answer looks like this. This greatest common factor goes on the outside. This goes on the inside. That's my answer. Now, there's one final step, and that is to check our answer. In order to check my answer, I do the distribution that we've done before. So I've got a 3 on the outside. I'm going to multiply 3 times x, and that gives me 3x, and then multiply 3 times positive 4. That gives me positive 12. Since this one matches my original, this checks out, and this is my answer. I am going to require to see all of these steps on your paper. All right, let's do another example. Number 2, we've got 4y squared minus 24y. First step is look at our big numbers. I'm going to put it in my calculator. Let me get my calculator turned back on. Menu to 5. I'm putting in 4, comma, 24. So my greatest common factor is 4. Second, let's look at those variables. And they have to be common in all terms. I've got a y squared here and a y here. So since I have a y in both of my terms, y is a part of my greatest common factor. How do I know how many y's they are? I take the one with the least number up here. So remember, this number is 1. That's not accurate. The least number 1. Yeah, that's right. The least number 1. So I've got 1 here, so I'm going to have 1 here. It's okay that I have another 1 here. All right, let's do the work. We got 4y squared divided by 4y. Remember, divide out those numbers. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Y squared over y. We subtract the little numbers, so 2 minus 1 just leaves me with y. Then we have negative 24y divided by 4y. It's really important that this sign goes with this one. So we've got negative 24 divided by 4, that's negative 6. Y divided by y, remember that is 1 minus 1, and that's 0. All right, so then what is my answer here? We put the greatest common factor outside, this inside. Always write it like this. All right, final step. Let's go ahead and check our work. 4y minus 6. So I am multiplying 4y times y. So multiply those outside numbers. 4 times 4 is 4. Y times y, I add. So y squared. 4y times negative 6 is 4 times 6 is negative 24. We just got that one. Y. This matches this one that I started with, so this is my answer. All right, one more example. We have 5x minus 3y. First step, looking at those numbers, menu to 5. We've got a 5 and a 13. Oh, 1 is our greatest common factor. If you get a 1, then there's not a common factor between the two numbers. Second step is looking at the variables. We have an x and 1 and a y and 1. Those are two separate, So we have no, so our greatest common factor, we have none. None, which means that this cannot be factored. So this is our example of a prime polynomial.